All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is Team B&B with another episode of Churning the Butter, the podcast, featuring myself, Mr. V8, along with the Ice Cream Man, our good friend KO Joe, and as always, El Gourmand, working the boards as usual, making sure the audio is crisp and the visuals are vibrant. So, this week, what we're going to talk about, and we know we've been going for a while, but this week what we're going to talk about is some of our experiences that we've had with a lot of the fighting games and Magic the Gathering that has been going on in our absence and since our last podcast. So, one of the things that's been going on with us since our last podcast was Ixalan, the set released Ixalan for MTG. Myself, Gourmand, and the Ice Cream Man all went to our local LGS. Shout outs to Pink Bunny and Damien. That's the guy who runs the place, and that's the name of the place. We went there and we played the pre-release. Yeah, we all went 2-2 when we all played, and then they played the two-headed giant thing, and I believe they went 2-2 yet again.
Nope, we wiped.
Did you?
It was pretty bad.
Oh, it was none.
It was a slaughter.
Oh wow. Well,
Bay of Pigs, guys.
Oh well. So, you live, you learn, and you let go. But yeah. So that happened. So we're gonna give our thoughts about the set. Maybe a couple of individual cards. We may not have the names for, but we'll do our best to describe them. And one thing that we will do is talk about. We will start off is we have gotten our hands on Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. A game that I told y'all, if y'all listened to the previous episodes, that I was going to get, which I did have the opportunity to play and get my hands on.
We also did the unboxing. Check it out.
Yes, we did do the unboxing for the deluxe edition of that. It is on our YouTube at Bread N, capital N, Butter. That is our YouTube. We did the unboxing for that along with the SNES Classic, the SNES Classic, which we are doing a Let's Play of a Let's Play of Final Fantasy VI, which we're doing that all live on YouTube, as well as other tabletop games and varieties of things. So, without further ado, let's get into this Ixalan and get this out the way, because I want to talk about the set Ixalan. I've been on the internet watching a variety of different people who do content for MTG, play Standard with a lot of the cards, Modern with a lot of the cards, and our own personal experiences with the set from the pre-release that we had. So if you'd like to start us off, what has been your experience, Mr. Ice Cream Man, with that set Ixalan itself?
So Ixalan was very much it's a tribal set. Let's start off there. So when we're doing the pre-release, we spoke of, not necessarily all drafting tribes. Well, you come to find out you end up drafting tribes pretty much anyway, because those are the things that usually fall into the colors. And they have a lot of support. I would say the draft experience, at least, or the limited experience, ends up being very much, I would say, mid-range-y. It's not as quick as a lot of other limited, but it's not grindy and slow as in something like a Zendikar or, a big ramp. So I would say it's more mid-rangey. From all the different tribes, we've seen a lot of pirates. You've seen a lot of dinosaurs. You didn't see very much merfolk. I actually didn't see anyone do merfolk, and none of them do merfolk well. You see a couple of vampires, but they were more thrown in. There was a lot of pirates, though.
There was a lot of pirates, and I actually, so far for this opening set, for this two-part set series, there's Ixalan and then a second part to Ixalan. The pirates are the thing that has actually intrigued me most, getting my hands on them, watching people play them. But as you may know, we are EDH Commander players, so I'm going to ask my esteemed co-host a question. As a person who plays and brews a lot of decks for EDH, which cards from this set, or which card archetypes, are you most excited for EDH?
I'm more interested in the flip cards. All of the ones that turn from a smaller thing into a bigger thing, most of them turning into lands. So the ones that are copying old lands from the past that are, limited, or they are in their supply, or they're very expensive. Like there's an enchantment in the set that basically, once you have a certain amount of creature, it flips over and turns to Gaia's Cradle. Now, Gaia's Cradle is a land that taps for either a green mana, or you can... Well, this one taps for a green mana, or you can tap it for green mana equal to the number of creatures in play. So that's usually a very expensive card in EDH, is like a $200 card, and this, as
being
much...
Gaia's Cradle.
Being Gaia's Cradle. So the enchantment that's come out is very interesting. There's a equipment called Divining Dagger that turns into Lotus Veil, and a Lotus Veil, what that does is it taps for 3 colors of any mana. It has to be the same type of mana. So that's like, cards like that are actually more interesting to me, more so than a tribe. I know I was interested in somewhat doing dinosaurs, but the thing about dinosaurs they just seem like dragons. Like they're not, or they seem like other big stompy decks. They're not something. There wasn't anything besides the general itself that led me to want to do that set or do that tribe. I don't think it's fulfilled enough, or I don't think it's well fleshed out enough to be a sustainable tribe and something that you would want to do. I know they actually errated old cards to be dinosaurs, but it's still not enough. If I were to say out of the tribes that benefited the most out of this set, I guess obviously pirates were a thing. Pirates still not enough. So that you are left with the other 2 tribes that are, mainstays in Magic now, which are the iconics they have for those color, which are Merfolk for blue, and then Vampires for black. So they did a little twist on these 2. The Merfolk have green in them, and the Vampires have white in them. So this is the first time you're seeing, outside of, I believe, Time Spiral, a mono white vampire. So you're seeing a lot of that, and you're seeing mono green Merfolk, which didn't exist at all before. Merfolk did have green before, but that was in Ravnica. So you've seen a little bit of that before, and I would say the Vampires slightly made out better when it comes down to the EDH, just because the Vampire Generals are a little bit more aligned to what they want, or what that is supporting. The Merfolk aren't doing too well. They're not adding more, but that's because Merfolk are pretty streamlined. They've had a much longer history of cards in their card pool, so there's not a lot to add.
Yeah, there's not a lot to add for Merfolk. Also, I would say anybody who bought the Edgar Markov EDH pre-built deck is loving all of these new vampires.
I'm one of the guys.
Yeah, he bought all 4 of those EDH sets, so he's loving all these vampires, and he was able to get his hands on a lot of the cards. As far as the other, things go for Magic, and by things I mean the other formats, like Modern is example. I'm actually not in love with Ixalan for a lot of the Modern cards. I mean, there's a few things that might be good as far as, single cards, like Opt, the 1 blue spell that lets you scry 1 and then draw a card. That's been brought back. That might fit into a few decks because it's an instant, so it may be better than, Sleight of Hand or things like that, or Serum Visions and things like that because of that instant speed. But that's very debatable, and I would tend to be on the side of the fence with that, where it depends on the deck. And for Modern, like if you're playing a red-blue spells deck, which relies on abilities like Prowess or anything of that nature, maybe Opt is a little better as an option that you can use mid-turn to maybe power up some creatures and get a scry before your next turn starts. But and then again, Sleight of Hand would be better to play during your turn to set up more of a continuous card drawing thing. If you're going to have multiple card draws in a single turn, I think cards like Serum Visions and Sleight of Hand would be better. Also, a lot of those flip cards that are so really good in EDH that may actually be good. Good old Boomerang is a card I don't think gets enough play in Modern, having been reprinted several times over. And that takes care of a lot of those because, as you know, Boomerang for 2 blue returns a permanent to their hand. So if they flip that card that does turn into, say, a Guided Cradle, you can Boomerang back and then they have to flip it all over again. So cards like that, a lot of the ones that I've seen, the Dousing Dagger and the various effects, their conditions aren't met very simply. So in like Standard, that might be fine because you don't have cards like Boomerang or any sort of real land destruction or artifact destruction or enchantment, But in Modern, there's so much control going around that cards like that I don't think make the cut as much as, a Lotus Veil would be great, say in Modern, the 0 cost artifact Lotus that has the Suspend Lotus Bloom, that's just a better card to me, personally. So for that side of things, I think actually the set's a little bit lacking for Modern. There's a few cards that are of note, specifically the Seer Spyglass, which is kind of sort of a Pithing Needle, has a Pithing Needle effect. But you get to see your opponent's hand first, but it does cost a little bit more mana.
I think it might be the best card in Modern out of the set.
I think so, and that's why I'm making mention of it. I'm a huge proponent of seeing my opponent's hand in any way, shape, or form, being like a Thoughtseize or a Duress or anything like that. I myself play Magic Online, Moto every once in a while. I don't stream it or anything like that because I don't believe there's anything worth streaming on that. Plus, I'm not too familiar with how that works, streaming from a laptop. But when I do play Moto, cards like that where Thoughtseize and, Cranial Extraction and things like that are cards that, Surgical Extraction, cards where I can, now after I've seen my opponent's hand, or I can just get rid of cards out of their deck, that disruption type thing, that ends a lot of that stuff. Like if I see one of my opponents playing a Dousing Dagger or something like that, I'll use cards like a Duress or something like that to just get rid of it. I mean, a lot of those things to me are liabilities. But the set I don't think really works, like I said, even though it doesn't really work well for Modern. I think in Standard, the set is actually really good because it has a lot of really good control cards like Walk the Plank, which is a 2-black spell that kills any non-merfolk. Very reminiscent of Go for the Throat or a Doomblade. I like seeing effects like that come back.
I personally like, and I still play it in a lot of EDH sets, which is Rend the Flesh, which was destroy all non-spirit creatures.
Yeah, destroy target non-spirit, Rend Flesh. Those are good cards. Like Walk the Plank is going to be a good card for, say, an EDH. I also personally think a card like Boomerang could actually make it good in a specific EDH type of deck, where you may want to like stop your opponent from doing one thing, so you preemptively, between your turn, say you have an opponent and you're playing in a pod of say like 3 or 4, and you want to play, and the opponent wants to, do something, but it's not your turn, and it's your other opponent's turn. So opponent A is what you're worried about, but opponent B is actually going. You can Boomerang something during, opponent B's turn, send that back to their hand, and have a really, high effect on the board, or stop their blocker, or put their Consecrated Sphinx back to their hand. I think some of the lower cost control cards can be very useful in the Modern and also EDH. Now, Standard, I think, is where the set shines. I really think that's where the set shines the most. I think Pirates, Blue-Black Control, is going to be excellent. There's a lot of different Pirates that have flying. They brought back, the blue and colorless spell, Favorable Winds, that pumps all your flyers +1/+1. There's a cheap flyers deck you can make from there. They have a lot of awesome cards. Another card I think is going to be good in Modern, and I think is going to go up in price, is there's a 1-cost blue creature that's a Siren, Pirate, Wizard, or what have you. But basically, it's kind of like Judge's Familiar, if you're familiar with that card. What it does is you pay, when the creature's on the field, and it's a 1/1 flyer for 1 blue, which is already pretty good, you can pay a blue and sacrifice it, and you can counter a spell that targets, I believe, one of your permanents. So cards like that will be really good and have some real general appeal. But like Dinosaurs is what I actually have a real problem with, and I'd like to talk about that for a minute. So Dinosaurs in Standard, I think people are just playing them all wrong. They're playing, red-green dinosaurs, and I think they're just playing way too many big dinosaurs, and they have this illusion that if I can get all these guys out, I think they can win. I think you really need to play on a curve. and really kind of have your deck, be it, red, white, and green, which is how I would personally play it, deny colors, have much more of a curve. For instance, there's a dinosaur that costs a red and a white that has flying and menace. It's a 2/2. I think that card is great. A card like that would be something I would play in a variety of decks, even if I didn't play dinosaurs. Because not only does it have evasion, it's also hard to block. So it's getting its
double evasion.
Yeah, it's getting its 2 damage in, no matter what. I mean, it's not flample, flying and trample, which has been known, but it's still really good. So I honestly think you want to get in some early damage, and then you want to get in some mid-range damage. I think, you don't want to have too many, 5, 6, and 7 cost spells in your deck. I think those are the ones that should win you the game. And if you're playing, 4 or more 6 cost spells in your deck, they better be instant winners.
Yeah,
in any
I think
60 card format.
I think we're gone from the day of you drop a 6 cost creature to win the game. I think we're gone from that time period where you can reliably do something like that. You can maybe drop a 6 cost spell at the craziest, maybe a 6 cost planeswalker, but creatures tend to be way too vulnerable, tend to be way too fragile in order to do that. The only ones that seems to be doing, and his price speaks for himself, is the dinosaur that has hexproof and is uncounterable. Now that guy has become an expensive card, but
I want to say the name is Carnage Tyrant.
Yeah, Carnage Tyrant.
Yeah,
it was
it's like a 7/5 dinosaur or 5/7 dinosaur that's green, and it has hexproof and it's uncounterable, and it costs like 6 or costs like, I think it's 5 and 2 green.
I think it's 6.
4 and 2 green or something like that.
Yeah, but you have to nowadays you have to play very large creatures or very well protected creatures in order to really say, I'm going to play a creature for 6 mana and this thing is going to win me the game.
And really, to be honest, you could have a deck in just with a nice ramp package that can just ramp to that specific creature and not actually play dinosaurs themselves, and just play like green red, as in green red good stuff. And I think that's a little better when you have cards like a Braid in Standard, and you have cards like Carnage Tyrant. You can just play those creatures. You don't necessarily have to have all the dinosaur synergies in a deck. And I don't think until the second set of Ixalan comes out, you'll get all of those dinosaur synergies. There's a rumor that there's an Eldrazi Temple-like effect for dinosaurs, where it's if you have a dinosaur in play, or you use this land, it's a land, to play a dinosaur, you get 2 colorless from that land. I believe there's a rumor that a land like that's going to be in the second set of Ixalan. So, cards like that, I think we'll get a lot more synergies for these cards as time goes on, and I think they'll be better. But the best tribe to me for Standard out of Ixalan is Pirates, hands down. They're just a lot of really good versatile creatures, and when you have cards like Hostage Taker, which is
also jumped significantly up in price as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, we saw that coming. When we got the pre-release, we got 3 of them. One of them is a foily promo that came as the promo for one of the boxes we got. So I mean, we got those when the getting was good, because we knew, we saw that card, and that the fact that they had to errat that card, they being Wizards of the Coast had to errata that card before it even came out. We kind of had a feeling it was going to be good.
They either means they either pushed it or they weren't paying attention, because that is often not a effect that you get in those 2 colors, the remove from play effect. Now, people may wonder, why is that so much better than, blue's ability to bounce to the hand or black's ability to just outright kill it? And the problem, or the best part about it, is the fact that you get this very hefty, very bulky creature attached to that ability. You don't get that type of evasion with that type of bulk attached to it and have that type of value showing up in those colors. You usually get a creature or get a removal. It kind of reminds me similar to a less restrictive but less expensive, like Shriek Maul. That's where that kind of reminds me. You don't get Shriek Maul was a creature that you could either pay 2 a black and 1, or you could play a black and 4 And if you played the black and one, it was basically a Terry, destroy target, non-black, non-artifact creature. But if you played the 5 mana for it, then it was also a 2/3 with fear. And this is kind of reminding me of that kind of value. It at first doesn't look like it's, that big of a deal, but once you actually play with it, you actually get it on the battlefield and you see how you're really getting ahead. Now, granted, you're not outright killing the creature, but if you protect it, it's removal just the same.
Not even that. You can with any color of mana, paying the creature's cost, you can play that creature for yourself.
So I keep forgetting about that.
So depending on what it is, what said creature is, that's just great. That's another one of the few cards I think from Ixalan that'll make a splash in Modern just a wee bit. Because there's so many good enter the battlefield effects. Even if you use that card, because it costs 2, a black and a blue, I believe it's a 2/3, and it says that when it comes into play, you remove a creature from play, and then if you can pay, you being the person who casts a hostage taker, can pay the creature's mana cost and play that creature yourself with any color of mana. So say you get Snapcaster Mage, that's a card everybody knows just offhand by name. You can grab that and you get that enter the battlefield effect because you cast that creature. So because you get to play that creature, you get that. Now I may be wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure you get that creature, you get that Snapcaster effect. That's great to get a card like a Censor out of the graveyard or something like that, or a Spell Pierce, or Mana Leak, or any number of things.
Or perhaps a bounce card to bounce your hostage taker again.
Yeah, like a Boomerang, like I just sung the praises of over and over and over again. So control looks very good in Ixalan, if in my personal opinion. But moving on from Ixalan, we're going to talk about Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, a game that we can't stop talking about for a variety of reasons, be it good, bad, or indifferent. I'm going to sing the praises of this game right now off the bat. I think this game is fun. It's very fun to play. I've played it online. If you go to our YouTube page, which is bread and capital N butter at youtube.com. Yeah, so if you go to our YouTube page, there's videos of me actually playing MvCI online and attempting to stream it to the best of my abilities. So I enjoyed the game. I didn't quite play the characters I thought I was going to play. That's usually what happens. I ended up playing Iron Man and Hagar in that order with the time gem. Just like I didn't think I was going to play those characters, but I ended up playing them. I like Hagar. It's a character I enjoy. So the gameplay itself, mechanical-wise, it's just a blast. I find all the interactions, playing with friends, playing online. The online is great. The netcode is better than Street Fighter V. It's the best out of any Marvel game I've ever played.
Possibly best of any Capcom game we've ever played.
Yeah, if you've played or attempted to play Marvel vs. Capcom 3 online, that was just, a short trip off a shorter pier. I mean, you just went right into Lag City instantly. I mean, the game is fun, and it works, and it has an arcade mode and a story mode. The story mode isn't, I wouldn't say, the best visual-wise, because nothing in that game is the best visual-wise, but the story mode was intriguing as far as the plot. It wasn't terrible. I did like it for what it was. I liked the stinger at the end, the after-credit scene, because it's a Marvel deal. I'm not going to spoil it, but it was very neat. I mean, the way that all the characters, coalesced with each other was cool, and it had a twist or two in there. But the gameplay itself is fun. I don't know. What was your experience, Miss Ice Cream Man? What was your experience with that?
Okay.
With MvCI.
So, let me get this out of the way, first of all. Marvel vs. Capcom is an ugly game. It's hideous. It looks terrible. Its effects are almost amateurish. It looks very similar to the KOF game that came out, except for they supposedly put a lot more money into it. So
into the KOF game, that is?
No, into Marvel.
Oh wow!
So, and we had Disney dollars behind it, so it is not a pretty game.
Okay.
It is also not a game with a lot of new characters.
Okay.
This game has a lot of returning casts. It has 6 new characters in total outside of DLC. its story mode is possibly one of the worst I've seen in a fighting game.
In which way?
In the fact that it's actually distracting from the quality of the game.
Okay. And
Like,
you mean that in a visual sense?
Not only in a visual sense, but in the fact that when you play it, or when people, describe the game, and they're like, well, the game is fun, I'm not sure why they put a story mode into it. And I think they were just pressured to place a story mode when they didn't really have an idea of what they wanted to do with it. It's not like an NRS game where they have an idea of where this story is really going. They just kind of hodgepodge throwing some of this stuff together. That I've went over that, we've been over all the things that, are the initial first, reactions to the game. All of that doesn't really matter because it's an ugly game. Fighting games have been a lot of fighting games are ugly. There's been a lot of really good, really not great looking fighting games. And considering that people play these games well beyond the years that they play any other game, even the prettiest fighting game is going to look dated at the end of their life cycle. For example, when people were playing Marvel 2, people were playing Marvel 2 well beyond when Marvel 2 was visually interesting or visually innovative. That was 10 years. 10 years in graphics is mountains and, seas, entire worlds.
And eons.
Yeah, you're not, you can play those type of games on cell phones with the type of the power that you have.
MvCI, it looks like a mobile game. Looks like Contest of Champions or whatever that was.
Yeah, so it's going to look ugly, and I know that it's not appealing for the audiences. It's not appealing for the masses, and I really hope that's not the legacy of this game, because I think Capcom may have made the best fighting game that they've made in years, and it's sad that this might be the thing that keep people from experiencing this game, because the gameplay is awesome. Yes, the characters are old. Some of these are returning characters, but all of them are spiced and retooled. Several characters that you think are very similar to old versions of themselves really aren't. Now, granted, I'm not really happy with the changes they made to all of the characters, but I will say this is a very they've added just a little bit to everyone, and some of them they added a whole lot to. Also, this is a very different game than Marvel 3. So we don't have assist, we don't have multiple characters. So entire mechanics of characters, which may not have even mattered before.
We do have multiple characters, just not 3 characters.
We don't have 3 characters.
Also, just to be a little bit impish and not to cut you off, you did purchase this game, didn't you?
Let me continue. This gentleman's playing the devil's advocate. I was getting into the good part.
Okay.
I did purchase the game. I told you guys I was going to purchase the game.
You did.
In the last podcast that they had hooked me. So I did purchase it.
You did.
So, and that's why I'm saying that if I'm giving something that I didn't think I was going to give, which is a recommendation to buy it. Remember, I said that I would buy the game, and my gentleman here, my friend, he said he was going to buy the game but not give a recommendation. I'm recommending you do buy it. You do play it, and you actually step aside from these terrible, off-putting things in the beginning, because you get a fine fighting game with it. You might get I personally think is a better experience than you're going to get with a lot of these games. You're going to get the characters are more fleshed out, and the reason I was saying you don't have these 3 characters, so now you have these 2 characters, and you actually have to play these characters. Like, you can't have an assist. You can't play a character and back up everything they do with an invisible or screen filling assist. You actually have to know how to get in, get the hit, know how to use all the tools of your character. And it's not just to optimize, just to, at some points in time, just to play the game. And that may, sound daunting, but it rewards you for dedication to your character and dedication to learning how to do synergy with your characters and putting the things together. It's a lot of people are saying that it's very reminiscent to Tatsunoko or to Capcom versus MvC2, which is this is high praise because you're not getting. It's unlike Marvel 3 and it's somewhat very much unlike Marvel 2. It's very much like Marvel 1. You're getting a game of which you're going to have to really, really dig into to get the optimization. Now, one of the things that they've done, and it may not be the most popular things with a lot of fighting game players, and I'm not sure if you've experienced this, but you've probably heard of it, that everyone does the same damage. Most people do around 6k with meter.
Yeah.
That is
6,500 points of damage in that game, and a lot of characters do the same damage.
It's the standard. Now, I understand why some people may be upset with that, but I think that's actually a really good move or a very good idea because it opens up the possibility of playing different types of characters because you don't have to worry about my character just won't do enough damage. I don't have the numbers to back up this character to even play it, so what's the point?
Right. So, but the thing about that is, on the flip side of that, if everybody does the same damage, then the reasons that the one character is better than the other is quite obvious. Like ease of that damage, right? Well, if character A gets to 6,500 points of damage very easily, and character B has to struggle to do it, then character A is just better. That's kind of the mentality. I'm not saying I agree with that. I'm saying that's the methodology behind the mentality of what someone would say. For instance, Ultron is in the game, and Ultron, he's got his air dash, his 8-way air dash, and all of his shenanigans, and he's very Doctor Doom, Magneto-esque in some of his moves. He has the classic flight ladder, multiple heavy attacks where he can take you to the top of the screen and so on. And a little bit of the issues with that is that, well, he can, open up the opponent and really get his damage in there quite easily. Or like a Dante, who's some people would say is the best character in the game. They get their damage. He gets his damage quite easily. So with his teleporting and his high priority moves and his, at the current moment before we get a patch, which a patch is coming with this game, and we'll talk about that in a minute. With his, his glitches into overheads and things like that, he can have easy access to big damage, which is the phrase that a lot of people use.
Well, honestly, I think Dante doesn't get his damage any more easy than the other characters. That's not why I think people think he's good. I actually don't think easy damage is a problem. I don't think that's what makes your character good. I think in this game, what makes your character good is their ability to control the match, their ability to control the pace of the match. So it's very much where damage is not important, now control and timing and tempo is important in this game.
Right.
Where like your ability to can eat up time and make it your turn more so than the other guy is where it's important. And then there's, so you have, we're starting to see in this Marvel world two types of teams. We start seeing the team where I call them the clock stealers, where we're going to steal your ability to play the game. We're going to steal your ability to, take time off the clock. I'm playing this game more than you are, and I'm going to make sure that happens. And then you have what I see as the response to that, which is, I guess some people would say YOLO, or people would say, invincibility,
aggressive.
No, I mean even the clock stealers are usually hyper aggressive. What I'm saying is disruptive teams. That's what I would say.
Okay.
It's where I don't care about what you're doing. So you're never going to start your game plan because I'm going to always have something to stop you. I'm always going to have something that's going to make you have to think twice about having this mindless play. And that's kind of where we're at in this, in the meta, if I were to speak on that, where you're seeing a lot of set play, you're hearing a lot of talk about set play, but then there are teams who, bust that up, who have teams who are like, okay, well, I'm glad you like that, but I'm spinning right now, so I don't give a fuck. I don't care about your set play.
Well, yeah, and there's in set play, what that refers to, because you probably, if you're a fan of fighting games, you hear that term a lot. Mm-hmm. And even I myself was like, what in the world are they talking about? Set play, set play, set play. What does that phrase even mean? Well, what that phrase means is what my friend Joe was alluding to earlier, with the control and the resetting of the situations and the making sure that your opponent, like for instance, when a person intentionally backs off from being aggressive in order to do a move like a beam or a super or a mind or anything else like that keeps the opponent where they're at, and they literally change their strategy to focus on doing that. They stop attack. That's set play. So, like, for instance, if Ultron, I'll use him as an example again, was doing a combo in the corner and he knocks down the opponent and then he backs off, half the full screen and does a beam to keep that opponent locked down whilst he calls his partner, to further do a mix-up, that is set play. That's what set play is. Those situations are set play. So when you see somebody on stream, you're like, oh, he's very set play heavy. He's a very controlling player, and he uses strategies to control his opponent purposely. That's what that means.
Yeah, it's very much. It's kind of like a term in Magic Gathering which is called goldfish, which is, this is how I play if my opponent doesn't do anything and doesn't stop me from doing it. I have a set routine of things I'm going to go through, and it goes through the motions. And it was like, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. It's very formulaic type play.
Kind of like another phrase you may have heard in the FGC, a flow chart.
Yep.
It's very similar. That's the same thing. Set play is kind of like a flow chart, and they're sort of the same thing. The flow chart is how you do your set play. Like a literal flow chart, A to B to C, and if C, do A1, and if B, do A2, things like that. But like set play and flow charting are kind of the same thing. They are the same thing.
And it's the opposite of a game like it's the opposite of reactive play, where you're trying to play where there's and I think this benefits certain types of players more so than others. So I would say like a game like Marvel, or currently that type of play is beneficial to a guy who likes being in the lab, and a guy who's trying to play the mechanics of the game instead of getting into their opponent's head and trying to understand a player. They're just trying to learn how to play the game, and then they might learn a couple of situations of what happens. So rather than a reactive player where a person sits there and listens and pays attention to what you do and then counters you actively in real time, this is kind of the opposite of that type of game style.
So, and despite what a lot of people may think, that lab and that very controlling and spending lots of time in training mode, that's what the lab is training mode. Spending a lot of time practicing your character's abilities and combos and so on and so forth. That's a very Marvel thing. That's a very traditionally Marvel thing. Like if you watch, Marvel vs. Capcom 2, you'll see the combos, the infinites with Magneto and Storm, ha ha ha, that whole thing that you see before. That takes practice. And people spent lots of time, practicing to gain those abilities and learn those things and play to the mechanics of the game. Not necessarily abusing the mechanics of the game, but like having extreme amounts of knowledge and expertise in the mechanics of the game is Marvel versus Capcom, the fighting game series. Usually the players who have the most knowledge of the mechanics and the system and can abuse them and use them to their best of their abilities and go as close to bending those rules as possible and, inserting their will, not necessarily on the opponent, but on the game itself, and just squeeze the most, juice out of the stone, or the most, the most out of what it is, out of every attempt, every try that they do. That's Marvel vs. Capcom. That's the name. That's been the name of that game as long as that game, all the way back to Marvel vs. Capcom 1, all the way back to Marvel Superheroes, all the way back to, and that's really almost any fighting game. But like a game like Street Fighter, which is a different pace than Marvel and doesn't have the same types of, things going on, is a little more like poker where you can, bluff and do other things. There's a little bit more room for that, for personal, interpersonal interactions.
And you see a lot of people who play Street Fighter, they're actually not very big fans of that type of set play mentality. That's where you hear in a lot of in Street Fighter, which they used to call the vortex, or what they call, and they talk about, game stealers or time stealers, or, where like, and why a lot of people are actually upset with Street Fighter, because Street Fighter has a little bit, Street Fighter 5 specifically has a little bit more of that than it previously did in other games. Whereas, they talk about, characters like a Balrog or a Laura or even sometimes a Urian being able to just put you in these situations where, all of a sudden they, get into this very formulaic type play, and then they just steal around from you, where they, it's can be very set plays similar to that. Whereas, Street Fighter has always been a game about, where they talk about footsies and they talk about, anti-airs and reaction and not doing a lot and watching your opponent. That's a very reactive gameplay, and kind of, benefits understanding the play, not the understanding the player more so than understanding the system. And system mastery is important in both games. That don't let, my speaking fool you. It's, if you don't understand the system, you don't understand the game, it's not going to benefit you more in one than the other. But you understanding how your opponent is going to react is going to be more important in one game than the other.
Right. So all these things that we've been talking about exist in both games. For instance, set play exists in both Street Fighter 5 and Marvel. Reactions, having good reactions, also exists in Street Fighter 5 and Marvel. And, spending time in training mode and learning the mechanics and of the game, that exists in both games. But the levels of which those three different areas are become higher on the priority list are different. And, like, for instance, in Street Fighter 5, the set play aspect is a little bit lower.
Much lower.
Yeah, it's much lower than, say, a Marvel would be, where it's much more high on the priority list. As in, where in Street Fighter 5, what's a little more higher on the priority list is your ability to react. That's a little higher on the priority list than, say, but the knowledge of the system is equally as important in any fighting game. That's one thing. No matter which fighting game you play, the highest priority thing you can possibly learn in any fighting game is how the system works. And luckily for, me, you, and everyone else, different fighting games are different systems. That's what makes them fun and unique, and why we're all not just playing Street Fighter and we're playing, Marvel and Mortal Kombat and every other fighting game under the sun. Because they're all different in their own way, and the mechanics are all different, and the characters are all different. And the nostalgia is different, like Mortal Kombat. People love Scorpion. I love that character. It's not the guy I played in the game, but, I want to see him every time Mortal Kombat comes around. I want to see Scorpion and Sub-Zero and, Reptile and all the classics, and Sonya and Jackson.
I want Johnny Cage to be corny and,
egotistical and, and bright. And, yeah, there's certain things that, nostalgia, and it hits home and you feel good. But speaking of characters, something that's coming up soon from today's date is the DLC characters for Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. And that's something I'd like to talk about. First thing I'd like to talk about is the price point. Each one of those individual DLC characters are price pointed at $8.
That's quite expensive.
That's expensive. That's $8. That's the price of the game itself. Imagine you bought the game for $59.99. Then you had to pay an additional $8. And if you want all three of them, that's $24 in addition. And if you bought the more expensive deluxe set, you get all those characters with it, because you get the season pass, I believe. You get with the deluxe edition. Also, though, one thing you do get, which at least I'm hearing rumor-wise, is you get the alternate costume for the DLC characters.
You do indeed.
If you buy them. But that $8 price point, now, I know the game reportedly hasn't sold as well as Capcom would have liked, but $8 per character, that's, in Street Fighter V, you can purchase the stages, the different stages in the game, and the usually if you want to purchase the Evo, Capcom Pro Tour stage for that year, that's $10, and that's usually what stopped me from getting it before, because I don't feel that stage is worth $10, and I love me some Street Fighter V. And I will get back to playing it on stream, and I will be streaming myself playing some Street Fighter V, and I'm probably going to end up playing online because nobody I know wants to play that game with me. But my point is, those high-cost DLC extra add-ons, that really turns people off. I mean, $8 is kind of like at a point now where people are considering, well, maybe I don't want all three of these characters.
I'm really considering it.
Maybe I just want the one that I like. Maybe I just want Black Panther or Sigma,
Or that Monster
Hunter. And we didn't even talk about the mechanics of each, which were showed off via the internet live on YouTube in a variety of different forms. So we have a small idea of what each one of those characters do.
Also, the one thing I will have to take into account was when I compare the DLC of this game to the DLC of a Street Fighter. Now, Street Fighter did have some problems with his DLC for quite a while, in the fact that it wasn't coming out on time, and there would be little to no precursor of telling you when these things were coming out, more so of like, well, you're supposed to come out around this time at the end of a month, and then sometimes it wouldn't show up. Sometimes it would show up, and sometimes it wouldn't. But the only thing that kind of made it, palpable to me was I could play the game and get an in-game currency and get these characters
possibly for free.
For free, like if you played enough. This game does not offer that in any way.
All DLC for this game. Well, all DLC for this game, including some of the extra costumes, you paid for them in some way. Now, I know they want to do that to kind of hedge off some of the, low sales, but like I said, that's a turnoff for a lot of people. That business model is not going to appease a lot of people. They're going to be quite upset, and
these characters better be good for $8.
Yeah, and imagine this. Imagine also if you're a tournament organizer or anybody who runs any sort of event, and you need all of these characters, and you're not a Capcom event, you're a weekly event like your, world famous NLBC's, Next Level Battle Circuit in New York, or your, another stream, the House of Chaos, where they just have setups and people come over to some guy's house and they all play, which is very entertaining. I suggest you watch both of those streams. Or Wednesday Night Fights, which is in California, which is another, weekly stream. You can watch these games being played. Imagine those people who run those events. They have to spend that $24 per console, per setup, per, every time they have to do that. That's a lot of money being thrown around. 5 setups, and that's already $100. And imagine how many setups they have per game that they might want to play, or how many PlayStations, I'm sure they can, somewhat kind of siphon off that cost and negate that cost a little bit by donations, and other people, being kind enough to lend that money to them. But, it's not like I hear Capcom saying, oh, okay, Mr., NLBC, that's a local game store in Brooklyn that has weekly popular fighting game tournaments. We're going to give you, for your 10 setups that you have set up for each one of those PlayStations, we're going to give you all these free characters. No, we don't hear that. So that's $240 if it is 10 setups. That's a lot of money. Now, I'm not going to sit there. I don't know if they're going to do all 10 setups. Like, they may do 5 or even 3. Even 3, that's still, that's $60+ worth of DLC for just those 3 characters. And they have to have them because people are going to play those characters. They do all look good. That's ridiculous. You're asking too much of people at this point. And because the game sold for retail price.
And the thing is, people may be, thinking, man, that's you guys are complaining about $3. I mean, usually these things are 5. This is 8. You're complaining about $3. It's the fact because we know 2 things. One, there's more DLC down the line, and
hopefully.
we know we're going to get 3 more characters. We are hoping to see more characters. We're like in the fact that this game had a decent roster, but, a Marvel game usually has a very large roster. So we're expecting to see a lot of DLC. The other thing is, because, and I know a lot of people feel cheated about this, that all of the new stuff is DLC.
Yeah.
Like, these are all new characters. No, there's not a single returning character amongst the DLC pack. and that makes a lot of people, kind of feel a kind of way, very salty about this DLC, because they're like, well, so you're telling me you kept all the new stuff, all the new characters, locked behind a paywall?
Yeah.
That's I'm not sure if I can support that. And I understand, like, if someone told me, well, I didn't get all the characters because I can't afford that, and I felt that Marvel was, and Capcom was trying to get a lot more money out of me by keeping
Nickel and
diming
diming
me for all the new content, then I would have to say I understand. So it leaves a lot of a sour taste in people's mouth that not only did you have all the DLC be new stuff and be all the new characters, not all the new characters, but it's going to be all new characters, and then you're giving it's at such a high price point. People are really, really not, and a lot of people don't care about those extra costumes. So, like, if they had an option where you could buy the characters for $5 without the extra costume, I think people might find it more palpable.
They might. And some people just complain about the extra characters as they are. Now, one thing I will say about Capcom and the DLC, to try to put a good spin on this in some way, we're getting 3 at once. That's a step in the right direction for Capcom. I'll say that much.
I thought they were going to come in pairs.
Yeah, I thought they were going to come in pairs as well. I didn't expect Monster Hunter to be, given out this early. I guess maybe, I hope not, in future things. I hope we get, like, many at once.
You know something? And I have a theory that that originally they were just going to do Sigma and Black Panther. And I think the Monster Hunter was put in later on because the sales numbers in Japan. I think they changed the plan. That's what it seems like to me. And this is just my,
theory crafting.
Yeah, this is my tinfoil theory on top of my head. So, go get out the Reynolds wrap because I'm making a cone head right now. But my theory was this game wasn't selling very well in Japan, and Capcom still is a Japanese company, so they want to see good sales at home. No matter how much money we give them, America gives them, they're still going to want to see a certain return and, natively. So they're going to want to push this at home, and nothing sells better at home for Capcom than Monster Hunter. And, people don't know this, but it's that Capcom has tried to sell Monster Hunter to the West several times as Monster Hunter and as other games. Dragon's Dogma was that. There was another game, I can't remember. It was basically in space, and it was like Zab Zero, or what was the one?
I have no idea.
They've been trying.
That's how much it was a thing. I don't even remember.
Yeah, they tried to sell that formula to the West. It's not nearly as successful here. Dragon's Dogma now has a cult following, so they did a little bit better with that. It does pretty well on Steam, which is really odd. It got this cult following afterwards. But, there's a lot of people who like that game. But, I think they've been pushing this new Monster Hunter too. So, they're most definitely trying to sell that to us, and that's why I think they released this Monster Hunter now, because they didn't think Sigma was going to sell it, in Japan. And
by himself.
Yeah,
no.
He's not going to do it. So, and the West really likes, Black Panther. I don't think they, if I were to make any suggestion of a character that I'm 100% sure Disney and Marvel said needed to be on this squad, and I know Capcom would have never thought of, was Black Panther.
Yeah.
And I'm not even saying it's on some racialness so much of, he's a character that you really have to be into Marvel comics to really care about.
No,
he has no appeal to anyone in Japan for any real reason.
Yeah, he's what I call a second layer character, where he's not your surface, main heroes that sell most of it. He's not a Captain America. He's not an X-Man. And
he doesn't have any weird crossover appeal like when Capcom tried to buy Shuma-Gorath.
Yeah, he doesn't have anything like that. That's a very old story. They tried buying not only the rights to Shuma-Gorath, but the entire character from Marvel many years ago, and they were firmly told, no, thank you. So yeah, that happened, and like, I mean, you hear this a lot on the internet, but I'll repeat it here for the sake of it, and I kind of agree with it a little bit. Is a game with American superheroes that are, traditionally popular in America gonna really sell in Japan? I mean, the Marvel superheroes are an American thing. It's American at this point, pop culture, and yeah, maybe Japan might go see the movies like Thor Ragnarok and so on. Also, Black Panther was put in that game because he got a movie coming up. Let's not forget that.
Right. That's the reason why I think he was.
That's also why Hawkeye was character look was changed. That's why Black Widow's rumored to be DLC in the future.
I'm not gonna lie, guys, and I know this is a small, very quick tangent, but I hate Hawkeye, the Marvel MCU Dark Hawkeye. He has no personality. Hawkeye actually had personality in the comic books. I wish they were kind of bring some of that over.
He did,
but this is Marvel MCU. Versus
Hawkeye.
Capcom. It's not, Marvel Comics versus Capcom. And I think that's really been shown in the roster picks for the Marvel side. Who over there can you name doesn't have a movie or hasn't appeared in a movie or hasn't planning to appear in a movie?
Or you've heard is going to be in a movie,
on that Marvel side. Because there's a lot of characters in Marvel, but
even here goes the thing too. You can get a special Spider-Man costume, the Superior Spider-Man costume, if you go onto the PlayStation Store and purchase the Marvel movies MCU Spider-Man Homecoming to watch. You get a special costume for the game if you get the movie. Now the costume doesn't necessarily have much to do with the movie, but
it's cross promotion.
It's there. It's a cross promotion. It's right in your face.
It is as
blatant. Here's this extra piece of DLC right there for you to get.
It's the most blatant piece of cross promotion that I've seen in Marvel in
a long time
and ever.
So. Yeah, and it's just to let you know. Don't you forget. This is how this is going to go. This is how this works. Let us not forget. Dollar bills. Cash rules everything around me. You know what I mean? That's just the way of the world. So, yeah, a lot of the picks for the game, the roster was MCU based, and honestly, I don't have a big problem with that. And I'll say it again. The reason why I'm actually not upset that we didn't get a whole lot of traditional Marvel versus Capcom characters, i.e. Magneto, Wolverine, Storm, Cyclops, Sentinel.
We didn't get the mutants. We can't say mutant.
We can't say X-Men. We have to say mutants.
No, we can't say mutants.
Oh well, X-Men characters.
That's something you may not know, ladies and gentlemen. But in the MCU, they cannot say the mutants. Fox owns it.
Yeah, Fox owns that term. So. Yeah, so you got a lot of these X-Men, things like that. You don't have... I'm fine with it now for this one reason. And I've said it, and I believe I've said it on the podcast once before. We've had 30 years plus of Magneto, Storm, Cyclops, Rogue, Gambit. Those guys have been around forever. We know what they can do. And if you get what you've always... if you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always got. And everybody says they want... the same old, but not really. People want, somewhat of a nice mix, and there isn't much nostalgia with this game. But that doesn't mean it doesn't play good, and that's where the beauty of this game, and everybody agrees as far as I know, the beauty of this game is in the actual just play. And it also, and in that, furthers something that we said a long time ago on here, and I'm going to toot my own horn a little bit, because we said it, you heard it here. It feels like the left hand in Capcom doesn't know what the right hand is doing.
It never does.
It never does, because the look of this game is still terrible, and then the mechanics are so great. So all that time ago when we said, it kind of feels like two different people are making this game, and somebody's doing the mechanical aspects and somebody's doing the art.
Not only does the left hand and the right hand doesn't know what it's doing, if the marketing's the left hand and the people who make the gameplay are the right hand, well, the people who make the gameplay are not only just the right hand far away from the left, but it's also been chopped off and is walking around like Cousin It. Because
you
it's
mean
so,
the thing? You mean Thing?
Yeah, but Thing, yeah.
Yeah, Cousin It is the big furry
guy.
Yeah,
It's walking around like Thing because it is on his own.
Yeah.
I am at this. It said I am convinced that it is probably, and I would maybe say for the best in some ways, secluded from all of the other chicanery that is going on at Capcom, because the good thing for Capcom, they haven't forgotten how to make a fighting game. They haven't forgotten how to make a quality game. Now the problem is all the other stuff.
A quality fighting experience, not necessarily a quality game.
A quality fighting experience. I take a quality fighting experience to be a quality fighting game. Now a lot of these guys, and maybe this is my old fighting game root showing, and I got a couple grays in my head. I don't need a story mode. I remember, I'm one of the few people who remember the story from Marvel 2. Yeah. It was stupid.
It was
idiotic, and it made no sense. And
you couldn't even play the boss character.
Not only could you not play the boss character, the boss character had nothing to do with anything.
Not really.
It's not a Marvel character. It's not a Capcom character. It's not related to anything.
No.
Like the first phase of it looked like something off of Plasma Sword.
Yeah.
The second phase was like a giant ball of stuff, and the third thing was like maybe a Lava Venom ripoff. Like it was like made
Lava Cerberus screen spam.
Like it really made no sense.
Abyss was the name of that.
Yeah, it was Abyss. Yeah, it was the 3 stages of Abyss, and none of it made sense, and no one cared.
Yeah, no one cared.
Now, granted, I will say I am being a huge Marvel fan. Will say that the previous bosses for Marvel vs. Capcom were fun. I mean, I guess the first one being Capcom vs. Superheroes being Apocalypse, which was fun.
No, the very first one was for a Marvel vs. Capcom game was Onslaught.
That was the first Marvel vs. Capcom. I'm saying I'm going back to Marvel Capcom vs. Superheroes, who had
Apocalypse. Yeah,
Apocalypse.
You're right.
And then
like Street Fighter vs. X-Men also had Apocalypse.
Yeah, had Apocalypse, and then they moved on to actually having Onslaught, which was my initial introduction to Onslaught. And Onslaught is a cool character in of itself, and would make a fine villain. And Marvel 3 had Galactus, which is kind of funny because it seemed like a very obvious villain that they would have done. You thought that, they might have just straight up jumped because Galactus tends to be Marvel's big bad. When they just want to throw a big stupid powerful threat at something, they usually just throw Galactus at it. And they kind of did that for 3. I guess this end boss is cool. But no one cares.
Ultron Sigma, I like them. Like I said, I will debate somebody when they say that the story mode for this game is terrible. I will debate somebody and say I don't think it's terrible. But I will not debate somebody, and I will agree with the fact that it is a little bit inconsequential. Now, a lot of people just want to red box the game and get a single player experience and do the ha-has and say that they did the Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite experience. They want to been there, they want to done that, they want to buy the mug, and they want to toss it back into the red box and get the next thing. Because that's the kind of world we live in now. We are, like my friend Joe was saying, we're dedicated fighting game players. So we will take a lot of the bad if there's a lot of the good. If there's a pot of gold at the end of that rainbow, we will cross the rainbow all the way until the end to get it. We're not, and we've had a blast playing this game online against each other, in the training mode. We've had a blast. So that's what it is. Now, as far as recommending for the game, because I said I don't recommend it last time I talked about it, have I come around on that? I will say no again with a caveat. I do not recommend it for anybody who is not already established as a fighting game player and has some idea of what they're getting themselves into. If you are a casual person who has no idea and no intention of getting into fighting games,
this purchase may not
not be for you. This is not a very good first introduction into fighting games, period. I will say that. I don't think this is the game that... I think this is a game for established fighting game fans.
I actually, I would have to mirror that sentiment a little bit in how this game is designed. Where this game is actually less formulaic in its combo structure than the old Marvel vs. Capcom games were.
Yeah.
Where Marvel vs. Capcom games were very much, I do A, B, C, D into launcher to A, B, C, D into super in the air. And you can play this game like that, but you are kind of handicapping yourself if you don't do the follow-up, you don't get, switch in your character and do the and get very synergistic at it, where, that was kind of the, easy mode 1, 2, 3 that they put inherently in, Marvel games that aren't as prevalent in this game. Now, granted, they did have the auto combo feature in this, which I think, gives you basically that experience of I can just press jab and it's going to do exactly what I said, but that was kind of like the, baby's first combo, type thing that was, even relevant in high level play. And in high level play of Marvel, you may do a launch, you may not. You may do a wall bounce, you may not. Each different character is going to have different, varieties of stuff you need to do. And it's a little bit more, the character's a little bit more different in their combo structure and what they can do in the middle of it as opposed to previous Marvel games.
Yeah, and something else I'll add to what my friend has been saying is this game is just difficult. Like, for fighting games in general, just to rate them on a scale of, easy to difficult, this game is difficult. It's not easy to play. It has a little bit of a pick up to play aspect, but not as much as other fighting games in general. Like, if Dive Kick, which is a semi-popular fighting game, or, Fantasy Strike has the lowest, execution barrier, this game is, 1,000 times, beyond that. And this game is, at any level other than the bare bones. And this is one of those fighting games, and KOF is very much like this. You're good or you're bad. Like in Street Fighter 5, I'll admit, there's gradients. There's good, there's bad, somewhere in the middle, and extremely good. And in some fighting games, there's, like Mortal Kombat's another one that has
something
bad, middle, and and good, right? This game... You can play it and you're good, or you're not.
I would actually disagree with this game specifically. I think there are tiers of good. There are more tiers than there were in previous Marvel games, and the reason I say that is because of the more evening of the playing field for a lot of these characters and a lot of these teams and a lot of these mechanics makes it so that there are people who are good, and there's people who are, godlike, and there's people who are just kind of mediocre. And there are more levels to this than a game where, a KOF, where you're either godlike or you're terrible.
Yeah.
Where I think
how I feel about this game, what you just said.
I feel like there is more of a medium ground, and from what I've seen people play, and from me playing, and me seeing, how the game works. There are people who are going to be obviously really, really good, but there's an entire tier of people down there who are making these, different growths and making these, are having honest fights between each other, in this kind of medium, skill set level, rather than it has been in other Marvel games. And the reason I think is because there aren't a lot of infinites, there aren't a lot of, touch of death. You have to get two or I think in this game you have to honestly get 4 solid hits to really defeat a team, and that's if you and that's because they have mechanics in there to get you out of situations. They have gems to get you out of situations. They have comeback mechanics to get you out of situations. Now, granted, you losing your character early is the worst thing in this game. By far, losing your character first is the worst thing that could possibly happen to you. But and I would say this game is less how can I say, comeback
less finite?
friendly. No, more. It's more finite, most definitely, but it's less comeback friendly than Marvel 3.
Okay.
By a large amount,
right?
Because there's these gems are good, but they ain't X Factor. You ain't killing an entire team with one hit and Virgil. Virgil X Factor could kill an entire team in Marvel 3.
More than just Virgil who could do that, but
right. But it's right. But like what I'm saying is like there was Marvel 3 was a touch of death game. Where like even if that touch of death, you could lose 2 characters and still lose that game. You could play it, so like it's less of that, and that's why I say there is a medium ground in this game.
Now I will rebut. We're gonna have a small debate. I don't know if you've seen it yet, but it's out there. The touch of death, the exact stuff you just talked about, it exists. People have found it. They know about it. They do it. And if you watch, certain people, like Ultron again. I'll use the same character 3 times as an example. You watch people who can do all the ladders and everything combos and the flying and unflying combos and everything with that character, and you watch a person who is not good. It looks night and day, and you find out later. Now I think that it looks gradient. The scales of ability in this game look gradient now. They look that way now, but you can see on the fringes if you watch a lot of the higher level and the more tournament and competitive play. If you watch that, you start to see the touch of deaths and the crazy glitches and the super extended combos that don't make any sense. And how did he do that? And how do you block that? And what do you do? And how do you do it? And the nonsense of the previous Marvel game and the predecessors starts to creep its way out there. I don't think we're there yet, where you see that more and more, because the skill level of the general, populace of people who play the game haven't risen to that, though. But at the echelons, the highest perks, you start seeing it creep out. And a lot of the Marvel games are a lot about mimicry. When somebody discovers, the new strategy that locks down an opponent and is very one-sided and so on and so forth, they will mimic. Monkey see, monkey do. Toucan Sam, yes I can. You get a lot of people who will mimic those strategies. So that's why you had a lot of like similar teams, back in the day for those older games. That's starting to that creeps out now, even to this, day. And if you watch more and more, because I'll admit, I watch a little more of these streams and these professional players and these, supposed higher caliber experts, a little more than most. And what I've noticed is that it does exist. I mean, you may have the general public and my friend here may have not seen these things, but if you look, like for instance, just recently discovered was a glitch that resets the hit stun scaling on an opposing character, which allows for a combo to do a ridiculous amount of damage and not actually, have their hit stun scaling, which is a mechanic that makes it so your combos can't go on forever. A way to circumvent that mechanic in the game has just recently been found, and people are just now implementing that. And I watched the previous couple of people who were playing and on the higher levels, and it's starting to eke out, and they're starting to make use of these things, and it's all starting to bubble up to the surface. So that's why I think personally that
here's the thing though. Is it just like we were talking about that patch that's coming with these DLC characters? I think they might reduce that because they have they made a very concerted effort in this game to give people the options and the ability to get out of and put people in and get them out of these type of situations. As in, I'll give you another example. Before, when you used to tag in Marvel, there was only one way to tag in. Now you have 3 different ways to bring in your character. So these incoming mix-ups that were guaranteed in the old Marvel games don't exist in this game because you can get out of it. So there's, and I know what you're talking about. There are, that's what we began in the beginning of this set play of like, I do this, this, and this, and if they do that, you do this, this, and this. But what I've seen is, there's a lot of that theory and there's a lot of that craft still being done. I think you're going to end up getting people who are in this mid ground in this game that are going to play it and still be kind of relevant for a while. But you're going to see these few people who are just going to be on top, but you're going to see this middle ground be there. Whereas in Marvel before, it would just dry up.
The tears are bubbling to the surface, my friend. I don't know if you've been paying attention, but a lot of people, have gotten their tears out, and there's some consensus among the community about a lot of these characters.
There's a lot of consensus in this community, and 2 weeks ago, Rocket Raccoon went from butt tier to top tier. So
that depends on who you ask. It really depends on who you ask. But that's one of the inconsistency. That's an example of inconsistency. But an example of consistency is a specific number of the people in the community also said Dante is good. Then they said Dante is great, and they never backtracked to say he was bad at any point. Now, some people have argued whether or not he's the best character in the game, but a lot of people have also said, there was never a time where they said he was a bad character. And he was always in the discussion for the upper echelons of the tiers. Dormammu was another same way. Mm-hmm. Now, exactly what this patch does, to move on to that, like we said we was going to talk about, is what this patch does is there's a few things in this game. They're infinites. There's a Spider-Man infinite loop. There's a Dormammu pseudo-infinite loop. There's a Frank West infinite loop. There's a couple of bugs in the game with certain characters, and that's what they're patching out. And it's not a lot. It's not even a full page of text. And they're not patching out, a lot of the current set play that you see now. They're not patching it all out. And the people who are consistent now are going to be consistent later. And people who have their set play to a point are going to continue to, sharpen that point. They're just going to, the rich are going to get richer, and the poor are going to get poorer in this game. And as the lifespan of this game goes on, I personally think they will separate the top and the bottom will separate further and further and further, and that middle ground will become thinner and thinner and thinner, and eventually it will disappear. Like, I'm going to make a bold prediction here, and I'm going to say, because it's Marvel vs. Capcom, and a lot of people, come from a lot of games, and there's a lot of new hype around this game, I don't think a lot of the pro players and a lot of the people now who are playing this game now are going to play it in a year. Or they're going to play it in 9 to 18 months from now. I think it's going to really fall off with a lot of people. Just the same way Marvel 3 kind of did, and the same way a lot of these other games did. But I think this game's going to go even quicker for two reasons. One, the game is a little less dynamic than, say, Marvel 3 because of the fact that you don't have as many, fan favorite characters that people put all the loyalty into, and they feel like they just want to keep playing this specific thing. Now, you will get people who are just loyal to Marvel in general, who have always been Marvel players and professionals. And
or people's characters just showed up.
What they'll do is they'll just play it and play it and play it. Your Chris G's, your Filipino champs, your Ray Rays, just to throw out a few names you may have seen on a few streams. Those people, will keep doing it. And for people who are already established professionals, like, a Sonic Fox or a Punk, who are playing the game now, and they're winning, they're going to keep playing and they're going to keep winning. Those people are just good. And I think it's going to get to a point where either you have it or you don't. And the people who don't have it, they're going to be online. They're going to play their little sets at home. They're never going to get past, 10th rank. And then there's going to be all the guys who are at, 2nd rank, 3rd rank, 4th rank, Master, Legend, which is the highest, online title you can achieve. And those guys, once that starts happening, you start people getting into that Master rank, you start seeing people breaking that ceiling, that's when the gap is going to get, really big. And I think over time you're going to see, the people who are not good and the people who are initiated. And I think, right at, so basically my argument is, in a nutshell, that time will be the thing that really exposes my theory on how this game works. I think over time you're going to see, that's what it's going to be. Right now, it may be some gradients because, people are in the transition phase from the old game to the new game. The dedication is there because it's a new game. I'll give you another professional. There's a guy named Alucard. He's a professional. He's known for playing a lot of Street Fighter V and Mortal Kombat and other games. He was playing Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. Competitively. He lost really bad at a high, money tournament, and he quit. He dropped the game. And the people who were the old Marvel heads, they said, well, I wasn't surprised. He's never been a Marvel player like that. He never had the dedication for Marvel in general like that.
Well, they also laughed at him and said that that's how he is with all the games.
Yeah.
So that's not even just a Marvel thing.
Right, but then they laughed at him and said that, but then what is he still playing after all this time? The guy still enters, Street Fighter V. He's still been playing Street Fighter V this whole time since the release of Street Fighter V, So he's consistent on that front in the case. So that kind of shoots that down just a wee bit to say, well, at least he's playing one of these games because he is sponsored and he is professional and he is doing that. So he's been consistent on that level. He has to, right? But he doesn't. Technically, he could make another life choice and just quit fighting games altogether. But he's
sponsored.
It's the dream.
Sponsored,
he's living the dream.
Yeah,
he's living the dream. We're not going to
give that up.
We're not going to front. Why would you? But he's not doing. But he loves what he does. You can't say that he doesn't. And he's been consistent on that front. And a lot of people are going to drop Marvel. You're going to see it. They're going to drop it. There's professionals.
Oh yeah, you're going to see people
see the
drop.
drops.
You're going to most definitely see that happen. I'm not debating that. What I'm saying is you're going to see. I think you're going to see more middle ground than you are going to see than in a normal Marvel game. Now, would I say you're going to see something where you see like in Street Fighter, where you'll see a lot of people with a gradients of skill as much as that? No. Or as a Mortal Kombat where there's the gradients of skill? No. But you're going to see this in a Marvel game way more so than you might have seen with previous Marvel games.
Okay, I'll go that far.
Like it's
comparatively,
it's like KOF levels are like you compared it to that, and that's why I kind of took the issue is because KOF is you play this none or you play it all the time.
I'll say this then. I'll meet you halfway and say this: the bad isn't gonna look as bad as it once did, and the good isn't gonna look as good as it once did. The bad is gonna look better than say the bad and say like a Marvel 2. And the good is not going to look as good or as overwhelming as it did in, say, like a Marvel 2. Those two things will look different. They will look different. But I still think the gap will be quite large in the middle. Either way, the skill gap will be hefty, as it is with most Marvel games. I don't think that's going anywhere. I do think it's going to look vastly different as far as the players who are bad, they will look somewhat more competent than in years past, and the players are good will look less overwhelming than they have in years past. Comparing, say, like this game to, say, like a Marvel 2, yes. But if you compare it to, like, a Street Fighter V or a Mortal Kombat or maybe even an Injustice a little bit, no. The skill gap will look quite hefty in that regard. Can we meet halfway on that?
Sure.
Okay. So, with that being said, folks, and us meeting halfway and coalescing and ending our disagreement, we are going to wrap this thing up for this week. Is there any other topics or things you'd like to talk about before we wrap this thing up?
No, I think that's it. That's a good show, man.
All right. So, without further ado, we're going to give all of our shout-outs. Shout-outs to everybody who's listening, who's been listening, and who's followed us on our YouTube, and our Twitch channel. So thank you for that. You can always follow us at MTGWWE FAN. That's my personal Twitter. We always have the capital H8 at Cobb Studios at gmail.com for anything regarding the show. We will be streaming very, very soon. We have a YouTube and a Twitch page, and Mr. Ice Cream Man has been thinking he's going to stream very soon. Would you like to talk about that possibility?
Oh, yes. I'm going to, well, I guess I shouldn't tell you, but I'll be hijacking the streams pretty soon. Watch out for it. We're going to bring some much-needed order to some places.
Oh, you don't? So you don't want to say what exactly you're going to be doing?
Oh, if we're going to, our first stop in our crusade is going to be Destiny.
Yep. So he's going. So Mr. So we have now decided that Mr. Ice Cream Man, he's going to do all the newer games. And what do I mean by new is, the up to date, like Destiny. That's not in my personal or Mr. Gourmand or some of the other people who are associated wheelhouse. But the Ice Cream Man over here, he likes that new games. He plays the newest, brightest. That's his bag. So you're gonna see some of that with him when he does decide to hijack the stream. We don't know exactly when that is, but I'm curious to see how far he gets past the locks that we have on it now, and how much theft in the night actually goes on. So you will be hearing from him very soon on our stream, and you will also be hearing from us very soon on our stream. We'll be doing more of the classic SNES, I should say, Final Fantasy VI, and there'll be more fighting games. And I promise, me personally, V8, there will be more Street Fighter V coming on the way. I'm in love with this Marvel right now, but there will be Street Fighter V for all my Street Fighter V fans. And with that, I bid you adieu, and this concludes our broadcast day.